feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
Open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the Cowboys.
Call this college rule.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. Dom and Chris here, and before we jump in, as always, we're recording down here at Engle Studio in downtown Tucson for all of your audio needs in town, so hit tie up if you ever got any of those. And we're in the midst of a pretty good block here, Chris.
Yeah, we got our brothers in baseball.
Brothers in baseball.
Which is it's a pretty solid B&B.
B&B.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an Airbnb, only more entertaining.
Only more entertaining.
Lots of good reviews on these players, though, too. So it's not like these are just god-awful baseball players, like god-awful Airbnbs.
I was just going to say, it's not just a couple of brothers who you get sad when you show up and you're like, this isn't what was promised. Who are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about the Martinez brothers, first of which, Ramon Martinez.
Ramon Martinez, who was the thought to be the better prospect coming out.
The older one. Much kind of like the Alomars.
Yes.
Yes.
And then we see this younger brother syndrome. Let's just get right into it.
Let's get right in. So, older brother Ramon Martinez, Ramon Jaime Martinez, born March 22nd, 1968, in Mano, Guayabo, Dominican Republic, which is a port town 9 miles outside of Santo Domingo, the capital. He was the oldest of 6 kids. His dad, Paulino, was a janitor and master of custodial arts at a school. And his mom...
Custodian, dick.
Buttered stuff! This horse is a diabetic! And his mom, Leopoldina, did odd jobs and just said brought in the laundry from all I had researched on that one. Grew up in extreme poverty there in the DR. Grew up in a home without an indoor bathroom and a corrugated tin roof. So
just to put it in perspective, like baseballs at this young age were non-existent.
Yeah.
So they essentially had to make their own.
Yes, they did.
And they said this even through when Pedro came up, where they literally was just like oranges, stuff wrapped together. Like what?
Their sisters' dolls' heads, Chris.
And I was just going to say, literally anything that was round that they could throw. That's what it seemed like. They were like, this. All right, let's do it.
Well, it's like we talked with Sammy Sosa, also from the Dominican, playing with like milk carton gloves. Like they're MacGyvering base. This is how hungry these kids are on that island. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's weird though. You're making them out of your sister's dolls' heads. If that isn't some Patrick Bateman like I think baseball is the only thing that justified that behavior down the road and how successful these two were.
They were using small animals.
They had to return some videotapes, Chris.
It was just not a good scene.
But their dad, Paulino, was actually a really good baseball player. And that was kind of the thing he passed down to his kids, particularly his boys. He was a great pitcher. Apparently had a mean changeup back in the day and curveball. He had a big league tryout with the Giants in the 1950s. He played with the Alou Boys. But he could not afford to go to the States to actually participate in said tryout, which is bizarre.
Well, this is what we see. Obviously, like the 50s are going to be different, but we just see this kind of them not caring about foreign players like they do now.
Which is insane because when Ramon starts coming up, that's when you see big league teams, particularly the team that he's most associated with, establishing these academies in the Dominican Republic and basically using that island as a farm system for 16-year-old baseball players.
He comes through he's like one of the first classes to come through.
Yeah.
Who he ends up getting with which is the Dodgers, where you see that all this talent was just being it was just like a waste, you know?
And the Dodgers, to their credit, were like the first team to really say like, hey, there is a lot of big league talent here. It just needs money and development.
Just needs development.
Maybe a baseball instead of a Barbie head. Maybe let's see what these kids have got with some formal training and their ridiculous talent. Basically, kids grew up loving baseball. In his early teens, Ramon became a star as a pitcher, like his dad, for Los Bravos, a local team. They played 51 weeks out of the year and paused only for Christmas.
Yep.
because Jesus Christ couldn't hit a curveball.
But that's the kind of baseball that would go on in the DR where it was literally like life, you know?
I mean, that's like we talked with the Alomars in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
That's what gets you off the island, essentially, and out of poverty. Ramon's favorite player growing up, outside of Juan Marichal, who's also in the Baseball Hall of Fame, he idolized Mario Soto, a pitcher for the Reds. So at that time, I would say like in the 60s is when you first started seeing, you know, one or two guys coming out.
Yeah.
But as Ramon's coming up, it's like, oh my God. And if you're talented, holy cow.
Yep.
At age 15, he was 6'3", which is great, but weighed 130 pounds, basically malnourished. If we're being honest, like get that man a sandwich and let him throw his fastball. He needed to go on the reverse Subway diet where he just ordered one of every or two of every sandwich. It's the Noah's Ark version of it. Oh, jumping in on that one. But the Dodgers, like we had talked about before, they're finally starting to put down kind of roots there as far as their scouting department. And one of their more famous scouts, Ralph Avila, saw Ramon pitch. He had really good connections and brought a lot of other Dominican players, including Pedro, on board in later years. Ramon quits high school after his sophomore year to move into the Dodgers baseball academies to sign him up, which is like, well, hey, you have to feed your family. Because we talk about a lot of these players, you know, like where money is very tight for a number of them.
Yes, definitely. Well, you see, it was so tight for his father that he couldn't make a tryout that would have changed his family's life. You know what I mean? So, like, that's a perfect example that literally is in his own household.
Yeah, and I mean, he needs to play baseball to save his grandma's house. Much like a former golfer, as we've discussed on this
former
podcast.
golfer. That's right.
God, I hate that Bob Barker. But in the summer of '84, he's 15, 16 years old. 16 here. The Olympics are in Los Angeles, Summer Olympics. And he joins the Dominican national team, and it's an exhibition sport, so you're not playing for medals or anything. You're just seeing if baseball would catch on as an Olympic event in the summer, which it did for a very long time. And because the Olympics are in Los Angeles, they're at Dodger Stadium playing these games. And in one of the games against Taiwan, the 16-year-old has pitched 3 scoreless innings, and there are tons of MLB scouts in attendance here. And basically putting it all on display. The Dodgers formally sign him after a tryout September 1st, 1984. Avila gives him the thumbs up. And, well, the pro baseball journey begins for him.
Well, I did find it interesting where when they came for the Olympics, you see that a ton of scouts came out because they were like, oh, yeah, we literally don't scout these countries right now whatsoever. So it's like 84. Nobody's putting it, so like, and that's the thing about putting this display where like the Dodgers are like, all right, we'll sign you. It very much
you're 16-year-old and talented as hell.
Yes. Everybody could see what was coming.
You know, he struggled a little bit early in his minor league career. In '86 in Bakersfield, he went 4-8 with a 4.75 ERA. But he's 18 years old.
Yes,
and he's playing against grown-ass men.
He's finally being fed.
Yes, he's fine. He beeps up a little bit. 6'4", 160 pounds.
Woo.
Just get the man a damn sandwich, and he will be good. He plays in the Dominican Winter League after that year with Tigres del Licey, and in 1987 in Vero Beach in high A ball in the Florida State League. That's when we start seeing him become an absolute stud for this organization.
That's when they say he finds his control. He like everything kind of comes together, which that's what you want when you pick up a 16-year-old and you're putting him through these, you know, like 16, 17, 18, and you're like, oh, no, we know he's not developed right now. That's what these years are for. And to the Dodgers' credit, they stuck with him, and you see it. You know,
and this was the era, kind of like we talked about Avery coming out in high school, where they would just throw you in the deep end of the pool.
Yeah,
they would just say, sink or swim, essentially.
Let's see what you got.
That year in Vero Beach, went 16-5 with a 2.17 ERA at 19, and all the teams wanted to trade for him.
This is what we will see where the contrast or whatever, the opposite is for his brother.
Oh,
He
very
has
opposite.
all of the size. He has all of the. Everybody thinks that like there is no roof. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he has all the potential to be that starting pitcher. And I mean, he does for the Dodgers. But I'm just saying, like for every organization seeing it, they're just like, oh yeah. What do you want? We'll give you. You know.
And their GM Fred Clare said he was untouchable like Sean Connery. You know,
Like Sean.
and he's rocking that awesome Jerry curl like his brother will at this juncture. In 1988, he's promoted to the 40-man roster, so nobody can get him, I think, in that Rule 5 draft.
Yep.
Spring training. I mean, and at this stage of his career, he's only a two-pitch pitcher, really. He really only has just a devastating fastball and a changeup. And he's still out and out dominating grown-ass men, which is
It's
insane.
pretty wild. Yeah.
There was a director of player development, Carl Cale, for the Dodgers, said he was further developed at his age than Dwight Gooden, who I think came up to the Mets when he was 19, which pre all of his other stuff was the most dominant pitcher for like a 3-year window in the National League at that age. He spends that year between Double-A San Antonio and Triple-A Albuquerque, goes 13-6 with a 2.5 ADR. And mind you, the 88 Dodgers are a very good team.
Yes, they are.
In August of that year, he replaces an injured Don Sutton and makes Major League Baseball. He makes his Major League debut. He was the second youngest player in the National League. You know who the youngest was? Roberto Alomar.
Oh, that's great.
In 1988.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
That's a nice little
Makes
spider
his-
web.
Makes his debut against the Giants.
And everyone's thinking of him as the next Fernando Valenzuela,
Yep.
a young foreign pitcher. They called it Ramona Mania. Although he struggled down the stretch, went 1-3 in 6 starts. He's left off the postseason roster, and the team wins the World Series. But you're thinking, this is the next guy,
Yes.
post Fernando. This is when Oral Hershiser starts to age, and everything else. You're thinking, this is the ace of your staff in the next couple of years.
But like you were saying, they had these 80s aces that you could kind of identify with the Dodgers. And then right here, 89, 90, you have this guy coming up, and you're like, oh, this is going to be our future. And I mean, to his credit, he definitely steps in that role, but the Dodgers as an organization kind of drop off.
That's very true.
I was going to say 1990 is like his year, and it should have been right off of the World Series. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
This
'cause-
should have been the rebuild that shouldn't have taken any time.
Yeah, like he splits 1989 between Albuquerque and LA,
Yeah,
essentially. And to their credit, they're kind of bringing him along because their pitching staff is stacked
Yes.
at this point.
And
So
he
it's
is
not
still
like
super young.
he talked about 1990 about how he's here to stay, and he thought he could win 15 games where his goal was 20 at 21, 22 years old.
It's crazy.
And on June 4th of that year, he struck out 18 Atlanta Braves. That's 2 strikeouts an inning. A 3-hit shutout. That's ridiculous.
And if you watch like highlights, it's dominant performance, like you were saying, fastball, changeup.
And with a curveball peppered in, but that doesn't
barely,
happen
but it's.
very-
I was
yeah.
gonna say this is when he starts to like use it, but it's not. It's not like a pit. It's almost like peppered in.
Yeah.
It's great. He's a really great pitcher in this era.
He makes the All-Star team that year, pitches 1 scoreless inning in that game. Was named NL Pitcher of the Month during that season. And I wanted to bring up about that 18 strikeouts. He tied Sandy Koufax's Dodger record. Anytime you're in conversation with him, that's greatness right there.
Yes.
You're thinking the sky's the limit. He won his final 4 decisions by complete game, won 20 games, including the final game against the Padres, of course, with a 5-hitter. He was the second youngest Dodger since Ralph Branca to record 20-plus wins in a season. That's
pretty good.
ridiculous.
He finished second Cy Young. He had second in strikeouts that year. Like if you're a Dodgers fan,
Your pants are getting tighter, for
yes,
lack of a better
I'm
phrase.
wearing my boner pants today, boys.
It's an optical illusion. Don't act like you're not impressed with this
Act like
Ramona
you're not
mania.
impressed.
Oh, take these back to the pants store. But this is the thing about Ramon, and as well as his brother, they're horses, dude. What they start, they finish. And this is kind of the last era of guys. When they start something, they finish it.
The last era of complete game pitchers. It really is.
He led the Major League Baseball in complete games that year, which is insane.
Which it really is something, especially now what we're looking at it, to hang your hat on, where you're like, oh yeah, that was his game. I saw highlights of his brother being taken out of a game, and he was so mad, and then it went to an interview with somebody being like, oh yeah, Ramon was the exact same way. You would take him out of the game, and he would almost want to fight you,
Right?
Like right there, just like, no, I'm finishing this. And that was their mentality in this household. I feel like coming out where they were like, this pitching be like, it's your game, it's your ball, that like you're on the mound.
Don't take me out. They might send me back to the Dominican.
We're gonna sacrifice a whole live chicken. Like that's just the way it was.
And then go to the Colonel after the game.
That's right.
Tommy Lasorda in 91 had a great quote about him. His manager, he said, he's one of the unique pitchers in baseball. He don't throw no fork balls. He don't throw no cut fastball. He comes out and throws hard. He just plays old-fashioned hardball.
He really, and that's why it was kind of fun watching him, because he really just overpowers like he overpowers the batter, and then really it's a trick because he really throws so hard that the changeup comes so
slow,
so surprising. It's so ridiculous.
But it's like the Nolan Ryan changeup. It's like, here comes the changeup at 85 after you're sitting on 95. He makes his second All-Star game in 91, but he has to miss it due to a strained left hip. And unlike his brother, his mechanics and control are not always there. If you had any holes to pick in his game, it's that, and it's playing through injury because he is a tough SOB.
It's very true.
He had a bruised right bicep later that year when Jack Howell hit a line drive off of him on August 20th, and he's taking cortisone injections. And mind you, in 91, the Dodgers are battling the Braves for the NL West. He's keeping them essentially in this entire pennant race. Unfortunately, he kind of starts to fade down the stretch after such a dominating start. They end up losing. He loses his last two starts, and they end up losing the division, I think, on the second to last day or the last day. He goes 17-13, but in his last 11 games, he only went 3-8.
I was going to say, and this is what you were saying, where they overpitched him. He pitches,
and he's only in 220-plus innings.
He pitches, 30 games, and at the end of the stretch, the Dodgers, it just unravels for him, where 90-91 might have been his in the beginning of 91, might have been his like best little era where you were like, oh man, this guy's the truth. And then it kind of,
this guy could be in Cooperstown.
Maybe plays through too many injuries, maybe overplayed, maybe, I don't know,
92 is a big year for him because his brother ends up joining the Dodgers as a September call-up there for him, which I think is pretty cool. This year he definitely deals with a lot of injuries, left hip issues. Doctors are saying he was compensating for it because of his sore arm, so his mechanics went out.
Yep.
And because he was sloppy in that regard, and because he wasn't telling anybody that he was hurt, just get me out back on that mound, you start to see the productivity decline.
Dip. Yep.
Mm-hmm. The Dodgers that year was basically a disaster for them. They lost in 99 games, which is their most since 1908 when they were the Brooklyn Superbas. Say that again. They were not always the Dodgers.
That's right.
He was diagnosed with tennis elbow that year. Some say from baseball, some say from other things. I've had tennis elbow before from wrestling and baseball, and it sucks. And also whacking off in the tool
I was just
shed.
going to say, everybody said it was other things for you, but it was wrestling.
Wrestling women in the blind.
It's true.
Go listen to Bullies Volume 2.
They'll give you that tennis elbow. But the thing that you kind of see with his career is it's kind of plagued by little injuries that kind of stack up, and I think kind of take him out of what his true potential was, even though he is a great pitcher.
He was supposed to be the next guy.
Yes.
He was supposed to be the next guy. Only went 8-11 that year with a solid 4 ERA. But 93, he's the staff ace again. But again, arm and hip issues are just derailing him.
Yep.
He led the NL, and that's what I talked about his mechanics. He led the NL in walks that year. Another losing record, going 10-12, but his ERA improves to 3.44. The team would never score runs for him either when he was on the mound.
I was
like his brother too.
Yes, I was going to say it wasn't a great Dodgers team that he came into a great Dodgers team, and he is kind of in this where it's really like spiraling out, and like I said. In 1990, you're thinking this is going to be a quick rebuild. We're going to keep this train moving, and you just watch it kind of derail.
They never really fixed what they had there.
Yep.
They never really rebuilt. They tried some quick and easy free agent signings that never panned out.
Some bad trades.
Oh, yeah. 94, finally a little bit more healthy this year. 12-7 with a sub-4 ERA and 24 starts. Unfortunately, his brothers traded this year, and we'll get into it in our next episode. What an absolute disaster that turned out to be for them. He was 6th in the NL in wins and innings pitched, and the Dodgers were in first place when the strike came.
Yep.
So that he still has not pitched in a postseason game yet, which is kind of sad.
It is because this is kind of where you feel like they kind of get their shit together. Strike comes in. We all know the strike was necessary. Baseball needs to do it every 2.5 years.
2.5? I'm thinking every season.
I'm thinking every off season. And then, you know what? We're just going to start it off with a strike.
95 kind of has a career renaissance this year.
Yes, this is where people say
he's healthy again.
He's healthy. He gets the 94. He's healthy. He gets a longer off season. He comes back in 95. He has 17 wins again, and everybody's saying like, "Here we go."
Over 200 innings too.
Yep.
And this year's a special one for him.
It is.
July 14th, 1995 against the Florida Marlins. What does he go out and do?
He does a no-hitter, and this is one of those things where it's a great no-hitter. Nobody's going to talk shit. But the reason why it's not a perfect game is such a bummer.
Let's talk about
it. So he throws one walk with 2 outs in the bottom of the 8th to Tommy Gregg to not make it a perfect game and then proceed to strike somebody out. Or I think he actually grounded out.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where you're like literally the last possible thing to not make it a perfect game. And it was brutal.
It's terrible. I mean, granted, they win 7-0. He has a no hitter.
He has a no hitter.
That will live on forever. He does an incredible job for the Dodgers in '95 because they're battling the Rockies for the NL West. Down the stretch after the All-Star break, he goes 9-1.
Yeah,
and they end up winning the division in the last weekend of the week of the season. They make the playoffs and they play the Reds. In Game 1, he gets absolutely shelled though. They end up getting swept in the series.
First playoff game, and the Reds were just
lit them up.
They're such a better team. That's just kind of the way it goes.
But because of his improvements the previous couple seasons, he signs a 3-year, $15 million deal. So he's banking on that.
Yep.
Banking on it. In 96, wins on opening day, and then in the second start of the year, he tears his right groin muscle, not from pitching, Chris, but from batting. And if you don't, pitchers should not be hitting unless your name is Shohei Ohtani. That's all I'm going to say now.
Well, can I be honest? He was looking for a new nickname, and they were going to say it was Pokey. And that's why he pulled his groin. Millie, you got to stay out of the clubhouse.
Oh, my God. What I found fascinating, he was a switch hitter, but then went back to left and right during different stages of his career.
It is a weird. I 100% agree with you. Where you're like, why are you getting injured doing this? It's such a
unless you can go yard for like 20 to 30 bombs consistently a year. Why are you even batting?
Yes.
Like what? I mean, that's the saddest part. This year, though, he does win his 100th game.
Oh, yes. That was
August 12th, 1996. Yeah. Trying to close in on that Juan Marichal Dominican wins record.
Mm-hmm.
And then on August 29th of that year, they go up to Olympic Stadium in Montreal. And who's the opposing pitcher on the mound?
It's his brother, which I think this is the only time they
started against each other.
I was trying to think about. I know they play with each other again. Whoa, but I think this is the only time they actually play against each other. Where his brother's playing for the Expos and he's playing for the Dodgers. Obviously,
it's a complete pitcher's duel. Pedro goes the distance, strikes out 12. Ramon goes 8 innings, gives up 3 hits, and wins the game 2-1 to kind of shove it in his younger brothers. Yeah, just a little bit.
A little.
Just absolutely amazing down the stretch for them. Unfortunately, they go into their last series of that year. I will forever love this one. They're up 3 games with 4 to play. San Diego comes to Dodger Stadium, and they lose all 4 games.
Yes, it's a brutal. If you're a Dodgers
To
fan
lose
in
the
this,
division.
to lose the division. If you're a Dodger fan in this, you're just like, oh yeah, we're in, we're good.
And if you're a Padres fan, you celebrated like you did last year
Yep.
at that ridiculousness. They still make the wild card. They go to the NLDS, and in Game 1, they completely waste an awesome Ramon pitching performance against Cy Young winner John Smoltz and the Braves. Goes 8 innings, gives up 3 hits and a run to that stacked lineup.
And
They lose. They lost the game in 10 innings, 2-1. But you're thinking 15-6, 3.42 ERA. His strikeouts are starting to dip, though. He's only at about 138 this year. So still a great season. And you're thinking, okay, he's got more left in the tank. Unfortunately, this is where all of the injuries happen.
Well, I was going to say 95, 96.
The worst kinds of injuries,
Yes.
not the nagging injuries, the ones that are
career enders.
Yes.
But 95, 96, 97, you're like, here we go. This is the pitcher that we thought it was going to be, all of that shit. 98 comes in, and like you were saying, he gets those injuries that you're just like, oh, he's not coming back.
Because in 97, he was humming. He went 10-5, sub-4 ERA in 22 starts. Unfortunately, on June 14th of 97, he has a small tear in his left rotator cuff, and they shelve him for the rest of the year.
Yep.
In 98, you're thinking, oh my gosh, veteran leadership is back. Here we go. Doing well in 15 start. He had a sub-3 ERA and won 7 games in that span. Unfortunately, June 14th, again.
Cartilage.
June 14th.
Oh, yeah.
Take Flag Day. You suck, Flag Day. Fuck you, Flag Day.
You son of a bitch, Flag Day.
They had an MRI after one of the games, and he had a torn, absolute tear in his rotator cuff with more damage.
Yep.
And then they sent him in for surgery again, and he's never the same.
The Dodgers had an option that offseason to pick him up, and they decided to decline it. You see this when pitchers have this where they're just like, no, we think you're great, but you're just never going to pitch again. It's like in Moneyball. It's just
right.
You're never going to throw the ball back to the mound. This is a pitcher with that kind of injury.
Yeah.
So
your entire game is based on you can't be a first. You could be a first baseman, maybe.
But he actually goes and meets up with his brother at the Red Sox, signs a 1-year deal.
Yeah, March 11th, 99, he goes to Boston to play with his brother, who's now become
The guy.
He's become what everyone thought Ramon would be.
Yes.
And he gets a September call up that year after doing all of the rehab and this is a point in the 90s where medical technology isn't what it is today. Perhaps it could have turned out differently for him if this happened 10 years ago.
It's true.
In Game 3 of the ALDS, the Boston's in an elimination game and gives him 5 2/3 innings and 2 runs to keep him alive.
Yeah.
And they end up winning the series under the heroics of his brother.
But still, it was looking at it, it was a good pickup for Boston. I think he went 3-1 on the year and had a great playoff performance for 5 innings. And then they end up not picking him up for the next season because I feel like everybody was like the consensus was he was done.
Yeah, the following year he wins 10 games, but his ERA is over 6.
Oh,
Granted,
yeah, there you
that's
go.
the steroid era
That's
in 2000. Don't get me wrong, but 6 out of the gate.
And yeah.
2001, he signs with the Dodgers in a very incentive-laden deal. They tried to bring him
I
back.
forgot about that deal.
Ramon Mania 2, Electric Boogaloo, released in spring training, and then he joins up with the Pirates. And does not last very long. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of forgot that he bounced around there at the end because he really did not play
No.
at all. For the Dodgers, though, he was their guy for a decade. You got to look at that because maybe he wasn't a Hall of Fame pitcher, but he definitely was, the best pitcher.
He was an all-star pitcher.
An all-star pitcher.
When
Yeah,
he
that's
was healthy, he was a really good pitcher in Major League Baseball. Ends up retiring after 2001 after 4 starts with the Pirates. He finished his career with the second most wins by a Dominican-born pitcher, Juan Marichal. Career stats: 135 and 88, 3.67 ERA, and 297 starts. 37 complete games, 20 shutouts, almost 1,900 innings pitched. That's a hell of a career for
It really
anybody.
is. It's a great career. That's why I really love these brothers, because we get these guys that we might not talk about, and they should be talked about. Like
Yeah.
Ramon Martinez should be fucking mentioned, you know?
Made 2 All-Star teams, 1,427 strikeouts. And after his career, he was a special assignment pitching instructor for 5 years with the Dodgers and did the same for Baltimore.
Yeah, for the
afterward.
Orioles, yeah.
Actually working with one of the scouts that brought him up, too, I thought, in Baltimore, which was pretty cool.
Yep.
I mean, so
That's some of those sports spider webs.
this is a baseball family, Chris. This is a baseball family. So, yeah, Ramon Martinez, everybody.